What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over things that zero build pros do to give themselves an advantage in fights and win more fights in games in zero build Fortnite. If you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful, informative, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you would like to see more. Comment down below what level you are so far in Chapter 3, Season 3. I know leveling was slowed down a lot this season, and a lot of people have been struggling to level up. So comment down below what level you are, or roughly like what level you're around. Interested to see that in the comments below. And if you guys do want to use my code in the Fortnite item shop, it is EvolveJake. It's underneath the webcam at all times. If you find the video helpful, I would appreciate it if you would do that. One of the biggest things that you can do to give yourself an advantage in the zero build mode is going to be the person who starts the fight and gets good opening like mid-range tags. This is one of the reasons why the AUG is like far and away the best assault rifle in game right now, because you can consistently and reliably get a decent amount of damage if you catch somebody off guard. The DMR might have like a higher ceiling if you only hit headshots and you hit every shot perfectly, but you can also end up getting like very little damage in a span of time because you miss shots because of the drop. Ranger and Hammer AR have bloom to deal with, whereas the AUG is just always going to be reliable, and if your aim is decent, you're always going to get a consistent amount of damage out of catching somebody off guard and starting the fight yourself first. So you'll see this a lot in my gameplay. I will get like opening mid-range tags with my AUG and maybe get between like 70 and 100 damage or so, and then immediately I will shockwave onto them while they're healing and pump them and then SMG them and get the kill that way. Or whatever mobility items I have will get those opening tags and then push them and finish the fight. It makes the fight really easy to win because a lot of people just take random shotgun fights or random close range fights where them and the opponent are already like missing or like already both full HP. But if you have an HP advantage going into the fight, it's very hard for the opponent to play that fight out, and it's very hard for them to win it. So try to be the person always starting fights. There's a lot going to come down to positioning and awareness of like where people are likely to be, and both of those things kind of just get better with time from playing and just knowing like where spots are that you're exposed. You just want to not be in super exposed areas as much as possible, and that's one of the biggest things in the zero build mode. We're going to cover that probably several times in this video from different like perspectives. The next thing that is very important in the zero build mode is to control power positions. This is something I talk about a lot, or pretty much any zero build content creator is going to talk about a lot. And I think a lot of people view this only in the light of endgame. They're like, oh, I want to be on the best mountain endgame, or I want to be on the best house endgame. And that is true. It matters endgame, but it matters at all points in the game. I'll have a clip here where zone is going to be forcing a lot of people to rotate through this area. So I go onto this IO tower because I have line of sight on pretty much the entire zone, and I'll be able to cut off a lot of people who are going to be filtering in on this side of zone as zone is coming. And you'll see I pick up like several quick kills super easily only because I put myself here. Like, I get 3 kills quickly because like my aim is good, sure, but a lot of it just came down to putting myself in the right spot at the right time. So not only do you want to control power positions in game, but as you're going through like the mid game and just different points throughout the game, think about like where the best spot to be would be to cut off a lot of players' rotations, and that is going to give you a lot of easy kills. And this is something that I feel like a lot of people get wrong because they don't ever like go for the power positions because they know that they're going to have to fight to hold it, and then they just end up relying on hiding entirely. And I don't think hiding or relying on hiding is a good strat to win games. It can win you games sometimes, but pretty much all of whether or not you win or lose just comes down to whether or not the opponent checks where you are or ends up seeing you. You know, it's not really in your control. It's all just hoping the other person doesn't see you and you catch them off guard. And if you rely entirely on hiding, like you just spend all game rotating dead side, hiding in bushes, and avoiding conflict, you might get some cheesy wins, like I said, but also you're not getting a lot of practice and you're not getting better in that time. And if you're not getting better, other players are, and eventually you will continue just to fall behind and become less and less like average. Like let's say you're average right now, and then you spend all of your time hiding and you never get in fights and you never like improve at fighting. Other players are going to be improving in fighting, so relatively you end up getting worse by not getting better, and that's always how it is in Fortnite. You saw this so much in Chapter 1 with building. The players who embraced building and practiced building and got better at building eventually overtook the people who didn't. And I know zero build doesn't have building, but the point still stands. The people who get better in force fights and like get better fighting are going to increase their skill faster than the people who just hide. So I wouldn't rely entirely on hiding. If you just want to get a quick win or whatever, maybe you can do that, but force yourself to actually get in some fights and try to get better at the game and control the game, and you will get better in the long run, and then you'll be able to get more consistent wins in the long run. Next thing I think a lot of people struggle with, this is something I've noticed while doing my spectating videos, is a lot of players just aren't decisive, and this is like one of the biggest qualities that good players have in any video game or pretty much anything ever, is just being decisive. And just going for something. If you tag somebody and then you like shockwave onto them, sure, you might choke your shots and lose that fight, but you have better odds of winning that than if you kind of stand around for a few seconds not doing anything and then eventually decide that you're going to shockwave onto them. By that time, they've already healed. Like, just be decisive with whatever you're going to do. Whether it's a good or a bad play, you're better off committing to a bad play than not doing anything and like kind of second guessing yourself and maybe making a decision then backing out of that decision and then eventually coming to the right answer is likely not going to work out. Even if you eventually got to the right answer, timing is everything in these games, and just committing to the wrong play oftentimes can be better than being hesitant and eventually coming to the right conclusion. So just be decisive. You'll make some bad plays and you'll die because of it, and you could just learn from that. And that is another huge thing that any good player does in any game, is you learn from your mistakes. When you die or when you lose, try to think about like what caused you to lose, what you could have done differently there, and that is going to be one of the biggest things that increases your skill over time or makes you better over time, is just learning from mistakes. A lot of players just play to avoid making mistakes, and they're so cautious about anything. They don't fight, they're not decisive, and so they aren't even able to really trial and error figure out what their mistakes are and what mistakes they're making in their gameplay. So just be decisive, go for plays, do what you got to do. If you fail, if you die, you learn from it and you go next. Like that is the whole cycle of improving at any video game. The next thing that we're going to talk about is just to always be aware of where cover is when you're in a fight. This is another thing I've noticed by doing my spectating videos, is people will fight out in the open even if there's cover like 5 feet to the right or whatever. Like they could strafe to that cover while they're in the fight with the person and then give their opponent a much smaller target to hit at, or to shoot at, to hit, to do damage. And that would give them a huge advantage in the fight. So just try to always be aware of where your nearest piece to cover is. And when a fight breaks out, go to that. This sounds like really extra initially, like, oh, I always have to be looking for cover. But I feel like kind of once you start doing this, it just kind of happens subconsciously. I'm not really sure. It's not something I really think about. But whenever I get into a fight, I'm pretty much always able to get to cover right away and make that fight much harder for my opponent. And when I'm playing the game and fighting people, the people who are able to do this are much harder to fight than the people who just stand there and let you shoot at them, or have to like look around and try to find cover and then they're not shooting you in that time. So try to always be aware of where your nearest piece of cover is. As you do this, I feel like it'll just kind of start happening subconsciously. And when you get in a fight, try to get to that piece of cover while like putting shots on your opponent and putting pressure on your opponent. It's a huge deal. So yeah, like I said, the people who do that well are much harder for me to fight in game than the people who don't. And your job as a player, or what you want to be doing, is just making every fight as hard as possible for the people you're playing against. If you do that, you're more likely to win the fight than they are. You want to avoid open areas. This kind of goes with what I was just saying, but the less time that you're in open areas, the better. This is obviously super obvious. The zero build mode, you have to be near cover, but I oftentimes catch people off guard in open areas, or I'll start tagging people and they try to run through an open area and there's just literally no chance that we're ever going to get through it. So try to avoid those open areas. If you do have to rotate through one for whatever reason, like maybe zone pulls far, try to make use of a car or one of the animals. That way you can get through it faster. You kind of do draw more attention to yourself with the car or the animal, but the less time you're in those just wide open areas, the better, I think. And pressure is another huge part of that. I'll have a clip on screen here, which kind of goes to what I was talking about before. I get some tags on this player. They get some tags on me. We've traded damage a little bit. They have a little bit of cover. They have a rock that they could move up to. But instead, they just try to full sprint away across like the most open field I've ever seen in my life. And I really don't know what they were thinking was going to happen. A much better play for them to make here would be to push up to the rock and then try to shoot me a little bit. And then maybe if they get good tags on me, they can run away. Like, it's unlikely they're going to be able to get the kill from that angle for sure. But if they can get some damage on me, that is going to make their life of rotating much easier. I feel like that, like, pressure is something that a lot of players don't understand. And they feel like they're either fighting or they're running away, and there's like no in between. But oftentimes, to be able to back out of a fight or to be able to get heals off, you need to tag your opponent. So this is something that, like, pressure as a concept, I feel is something that like a lot of players don't understand. Like, I'll be in a fight on stream and someone will tag me, and then instead of healing, I'll start shooting them back, and people are like, why are you shooting them back? And the reason is, if you don't shoot back at people, they're just going to push you and they're going to kill you. But like if someone tags you for 50 and you tag them back for 50, you're going to be able to pop heals and they're less likely to push you in that time. So yeah, the more you understand pressure and the more you're able to, you know, tag your opponents down and force them to like either take cover and heal or wait for their overshield to come back, the more you're going to be able to do with that time as well. In close range fights with the shotgun, this is something I've talked about a bunch, but I still see people struggling with it. You want to, if you're using the pump, which I would recommend, I think the pump is the best shotgun in the game right now, and it has the highest ceiling. But with the pump shotgun in zero build, you're pretty much only using your SMG to fill the time between pump shots, unless you're like decently far away from them, obviously. But if they're within like shotgun range, you basically just want to pump, switch to your SMG, shoot a few bullets. Like you'll have to get the timing down and really practice to figure out what the time is to where you can get optimal amount of shotgun shots, but you basically want as little time between shotgun shots as possible, and you're going to fill that void of time with some SMG shots. So you might pump somebody for 120, shoot them with like 3 SMG bullets, that's 20 each roughly, so let's just say that's like 60 more damage. Now you've done 180 to them. You only need 70 more damage to finish off the fight, and it's going to be faster for you to swap to your pump and then hit 1 shotgun shot that's going to do over 70 damage than it is going to be to hit 5 more shotgun shots. And this is another thing in game where like if you play against a player who does this well, it's much harder to play against them than a player who just stays on their SMG the entire time. And there are times where you might want to just stay on your SMG, but for the most part, you want to pump, swap to your SMG, and then swap back to your pump. And like I said, the people who do this well are much harder to play against. The next thing that a lot of players that are very good or pro players do is they have a plan in-game. This is another thing that playing in-game, I notice some people just really do wrong, where we wait. It might be a 1v1 scenario, so there's 3 people in a solo. In-game, they're just kind of like waiting to see what zone does, and then when zone pulls, it seems like they have no clue what they were going to do. They just like full sprint out and then like they're an easy beam or whatever. So in the time where you're maybe just camping and waiting to see what zone does, try to like plan out your rotations ahead of time depending on what you're going to do. And this is another thing where if you watch my streams, I do this a lot and I talk about this a lot with like the pinging feature or the marking feature. You can mark on the map and kind of see what is and isn't in zone and then plan your rotations accordingly. And the people who do this well and the people who have a planned in-game and know what they're going to do ahead of time, depending on what zone does, are typically going to be the people who win it, because it's much easier to just kind of do something that you've already thought about than just reacting entirely on the fly. And a lot of people are reacting entirely on the fly in-game because they're, I don't know, they're nervous, they're stressed, they're playing so passive that they're just like not able to really get anything done, and it really holds them back. So yeah, try to think about what you're going to do in advance in-game, especially in those times where nothing is happening. I feel like a lot of zero build end-games kind of come down to a situation where you're just kind of sitting around and waiting for zone to shrink before people come out of their hiding spots. So try to plan your rotations in advance. The next 2 things are going to be very basic and general, but they can have a huge impact on your gameplay. And the first one is going to be that good players play to improve. And this kind of goes with what I was saying before when I was saying you don't want to just hide all the time. And, you know, being decisive, you might make some mistakes and lose games, but you'll learn from it as well. If you play to get better over time, you're going to end up getting more wins in the long run. I feel like a lot of more like newer players or casual players try to win or get kills or whatever without actually improving, and that really stunts their growth because they end up playing in that cheesy way forever, and then they never improve. The rest of the player base improves over time, like I said, and then those people are just kind of left in the dust. So you want to always be trying to get better or playing to improve if your goal is to win, and if you're watching this channel, I feel like that is your goal. And then the final thing that I want to talk about is adapt to new items and changes. This is a huge deal in Fortnite because the game is always changing. The loot pool is always changing. The map is always changing. So the players that adapt to those new items and adapt to those changes best are going to be the people who end up doing the best. So I recently had someone comment on a video being like, I don't even know if I want to like really learn to use the grappler or the shockwaves, because who knows if they're going to be there in a few weeks from now. And sure, that is true. Who knows what's going to be in the game a few weeks from now or next season. But if you learn the new items and you adapt to the new items and you adapt to the changes, you're going to be able to do better in the long run. And Fortnite has a history of kind of vaulting items and then bringing them back. Like the grappler gloves, for example, were the Spider-Man web slingers in Chapter 3, Season 1. So people who played then and learned them then were already able to just like kind of hit the ground running when they were added into the game again. And then the same is true with shockwaves and most items that are in Fortnite and most metas that are in Fortnite. The game is always changing. The map is always changing. The loot pool is always changing. So adapting to change is one of the most important qualities of a Fortnite player. And that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys find it helpful, informative. If you did, remember to give it a like. Use code EvolveJake in the item shop. Subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below letting me know what level you are so far in Chapter 3, Season 3. Thanks for watching.